The torch fell from his hand. It wasn't because he was tired, and it wasn't because he slipped. It was because he saw the wall move. The hieroglyphs were changing. Their ancient, painted eyes began to glow a faint, menacing gold. Their mouths, sealed for millennia, seemed to stretch into silent screams. The last thing the archaeologist heard before the darkness swallowed him whole was a whisper, a sound like sand scraping stone, in a language dead for 3,000 years. You were warned. This is the story of the tomb of Pharaoh Akhetaron, a place sealed for over 3 millennia, buried so deep beneath layers of sand, stone, and forgotten time that it was considered nothing more than a myth, a legend told by desert tribes and arrogantly dismissed by scholars. There were no records, no maps, no official mention of it in any historical text. There were only stories, stories of a king so powerful, so defiant, that priests claimed even death itself feared him. A ruler who believed his soul would not pass into the afterlife, but would remain, tethered to his body, to guard his tomb forever. Drive Elias Moreau was a man of science. He believed in archaeology, in hard data, and in observable facts. He scoffed at tales of curses and supernatural guardians. And that very belief, that unshakable faith in logic, would be the instrument of his destruction. The expedition found the tomb at dawn, a stark, black stone doorway half buried beneath the towering dunes. Appearing as if it had been placed there only yesterday, it was untouched by time. No cracks, no erosion, no telltale marks from looters. It was perfectly sealed. Inscribed above the entrance were the ancient hieroglyphs, and their translations sent a shiver through the junior members of the team. Disturb not the sleeper, for his soul walks without chains. Elias just laughed. Dramatic poetry, he declared to his team. Fear tactics to scare off grave robbers. That's all. With his command, the team broke the seal, and history took its first, chilling breath in 3 millennia. The moment they stepped inside, the atmosphere changed. The air was cold, but it wasn't the familiar cold of a desert night. It was a grave cold, a deep, penetrating chill that seemed to seep into their bones. The flickering light of their torches revealed walls painted in shimmering gold and stark, forbidding obsidian. The carvings were magnificent, depicting Pharaoh Akhetaron standing triumphant over his enemies, with gods kneeling before him and human souls being weighed on scales made of fire. But something was horribly wrong. In every single mural, every figure had their eyes meticulously scratched out, every figure except one. The Pharaoh. His eyes were perfectly intact, rendered in lapis lazuli, and they seemed to be watching. They found the sarcophagus in the central chamber, a monolithic coffin of pure black stone. There were no cracks, no dust, no signs of decay. It was so pristine, it was as if time itself had actively avoided it. Engraved on the lid was a simple, terrifying statement. My flesh sleeps, my spirit does not. The team gathered around, tools ready. The moment their crowbars made contact, the moment the heavy lid began to shift, every torch in the tomb flickered violently, as if a great wind had swept through the sealed chamber. The air pressure dropped so suddenly their ears popped. The profound silence became heavy, suffocating. Then, a scream. One of the local workers, a strong man who had worked in tombs his entire life, collapsed to the floor, foam frothed at his mouth. His eyes rolled back into his head, and his heart simply stopped. There was no wound, no sign of poison, no rational explanation. The expedition doctor frantically called it a sudden medical emergency, a tragic aneurysm. But the tomb had just claimed its first soul. That night, the curse truly began to awaken. The nightmares started. Every single member of the team, sleeping in separate tents miles from the tomb, dreamed the exact same dream. They found themselves standing in a desolate desert of blacks and under a burning, blood-red sun. Before them sat a throne made of human bones, and upon it, a shadowy figure. A voice echoed in their minds, not in a language they knew, but in a way they understood perfectly. You walk on my grave. So now, I walk in your world. They all woke up screaming, drenched in cold sweat, the shared horror dawning on them. Death began to follow them like a shadow. First, a senior researcher, a man known for his caution, fell down an empty elevator shaft back at the hotel. When they reviewed the security footage, the camera feed glitched to static for the single, precise moment he fell. Next, a brilliant linguist was found drowned in a shallow hotel pool. The autopsy was baffling. Her lungs were completely filled with sand, not water. A few days later, the team's cameraman woke up screaming that he couldn't see. He was totally blind. Doctors examined him, finding his eyes perfectly healthy, but the nerves connecting them to his brain were inexplicably dead. Every specialist was stumped. They found no disease, no toxins, no infections, just a string of impossible, terrifying deaths. The media called it a tragic series of coincidences. The local villagers called it what it was, the curse. Panicked, Elias finally ordered a full, urgent translation of every text found within the tomb. He had dismissed them as poetry before, but now he read them with desperate, dawning terror. One line, found on a hidden tablet, changed everything. He who wakes the king shall carry the king. Another, etched on the floor around the sarcophagus, read, the body is stone. The soul is storm. The storm follows. It was then that the horrifying truth began to settle in. The Pharaoh wasn't just guarding his tomb from the inside. His very essence was attached to it, bound to his physical remains. And now that they had moved those remains, they had untethered the storm. The final pieces of the puzzle clicked into place as they studied forbidden texts that spoke of Akatra. The ancient priests believed the pharaoh had performed a dark, forbidden ritual just before his death. A ritual designed not for passage into the afterlife, but to trap his soul in the space between life and death. He was not alive, not dead. He was anchored to his body, so that if his tomb was ever disturbed, his spirit would follow the intruders, latching onto them, feeding on their fear, their guilt, their very life force. This wasn't a ghost haunting a place. It was a cursed consciousness, a living shadow that now walked among them. Elias, the man of science, finally broke. He started seeing things in the corners of his vision, a reflection in a window that moved a split second after he did, a shadow in a hallway that didn't move at all. He heard whispers in the dead of night, in languages he had never studied but somehow understood. He tried to flee Egypt. His flight was cancelled due to a mechanical failure. He booked another. It was cancelled due to a sandstorm that appeared out of nowhere. He booked a third. That plane took off, but crashed in the Mediterranean less than an hour later. Everyone on board died. Elias Moreau finally stopped believing in coincidence. The last translation came from a set of tiny hieroglyphs, almost invisible, etched into the stone wall behind where the sarcophagus had once stood. It was the final, devastating piece of the curse's design. It read, "Only one may carry the king. Only one may bind the storm. Only one may remain." It wasn't a curse meant to kill everyone. It was a transfer. The tomb wasn't just a grave, it was a cage. And now that the cage was open, the entity wasn't just killing for revenge. It was choosing a new cage, a new host. They sealed the tomb. The remaining members of the expedition reburied it, dynamited the entrance, and used every resource they had to erase its location from every map and record. The expedition was officially declared a disaster. The deaths a string of unfortunate accidents. The curse of Akatra was dismissed as a myth by a world that refused to believe. History moved on, but Dr. Elias Moreau simply disappeared. No body was ever found. No records of him leaving the country. No financial trail. Nothing. He vanished from the face of the earth. The only clue, the only hint of his fate, came months later. A strange, unconfirmed report from a remote desert village deep in the Sahara. They spoke of a lone man seen wandering the dunes at night. A man who never ate, never slept, who simply walked. A man whose eyes, they said, glowed with a faint, terrible gold. A man who was heard whispering to the shifting sands in perfect, ancient Egyptian. The tomb is sealed again. The Pharaoh is gone from his resting place. But the curse no longer needs a tomb. Because now, it walks. Thank you for watching. If stories of history's darkest mysteries fascinate you, make sure to like and subscribe for more.